Hello there, folks. My name is Spoonks, and I saw the Bob's Burgers movie, and it was delightful. Now, I am a huge fan of Bob's Burgers. While I got into the show relatively late because I was too young to get into it when it first premiered, I still fell in love with it with the very first episode I watched. Don't remember the name of it, but it was the Halloween special where the family tries to scare Louise at the old house in the middle of nowhere. If you've seen this episode, you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I am a big fan of the show. I love the humor, I love the writing, the world, the characters, everything about it. It is really a comfort show of mine that I love to watch anytime or any day, whether it be after a long day at work or school, or I just need something funny to watch. And when they announced that a movie was in the works, I was really excited. I could not wait to see the Belchers on the big screen, but obviously I was a little sad that it was pushed back 2 years because of, well, you know. But the fact that now it is officially out, I could not be more excited. The trailers looked great, and I was really curious to see what situations and perils the Belchers will get themselves into that's worthy of a theatrically released movie. And I'm happy to report that I was not disappointed. I had such a great time with the Bob's Burgers movie. First off, I would just like to say that the best thing about this movie is the humor. Now, obviously, this is a much longer plot for something typical of Bob's Burgers than what they would do on their TV show, so obviously they would throw in more jokes. But folks, let me just say, this is one of those movies where there is a joke, or at least an attempt at making you laugh like every 4 seconds. You missed a joke, too bad. The next one is just right around the corner. And everyone, let me just say, it's not just some, it's not just most, but the grand majority of the jokes had me laughing out loud and consistently throughout the whole movie. Just the way the writers write these jokes and how they're delivered by the voice actors and how they play out within scenes, and just the overall crazy situations the Belchers get into is just hilarious and gave me a big stupid grin on my face and just let me laugh out loud throughout the whole thing. Of course, there are a couple ones that do fall flat, and some of which drag on for way too long, as typical with any comedy really, but the grand majority of these jokes had me laughing out loud, and the comedy certainly delivered. The characters in here are just as likable as they are in the show. Of course, you got the Belchers, who are just so lovable and hilarious all around. They play off of each other very well. They're very likable, and the situations they get into are extremely absurd and hilarious, but you can also tell that they all love and support each other, which is why this family has been so revered for the past couple years, because it's a animated show where the family doesn't really hate each other, or you get the feeling that they dislike one another, like a show like Family Guy or even Rick and Morty. They all want to help each other out and do everything they can to help the restaurant in any way they can, and even if they don't see each other eye to eye, they still love and care about each other. And while some of the family members get the shaft a bit, they're still likable and entertaining, so you don't feel like their screen time is wasted. Ironically enough, the character we learn the most about in this movie is Louise. We kind of get some backstory about her and learn more about her as a person, and even about her relationship with Bob, which was honestly kind of adorable and sweet and wholesome. The plot, while on paper doesn't sound all that interesting, and believe me, we'll get to that later, it is executed in a very solid way. Not only is the plot where Bob and Linda try to salvage what they can with the sinkhole forming in front of the restaurant, and causing business to go slow is hilarious and leads to some very entertaining moments. It is also intertwined with the main plot with the kids trying to solve a murder mystery, which is not only 10 billion times better than Death on the Nile, but also leads to some pretty interesting, intricate plot points and details about um once again Louise as a character, but just some overall interesting tidbits and facts about the murder mystery and some characters as well. The mystery is also just really fun and interesting to solve. Who would have thought in order to make a good murder mystery movie you would have to make it fun and exciting? I wish they told Kenneth Branagh that when he was making Death on the Nile, but we discussed that movie already. And the last positive thing I will say about this movie is the animation. Now, as far back as when the first trailer was released, everyone was jumping on the animation for this movie because, oh my god, you could tell this is a movie based off a TV show because they added shading and stuff like that. And while, yes, that is true, the shading does add a little bit of detail to it, I believe it's so much more than that because Bob's Burgers as a show isn't really revered as a timeless classic because of its animation. It's very stilted. There's not a lot happening with the animation. It's really based in the characters, the world, and the writing of the. But since this is a movie with a much bigger budget, they're allowed to do much more with the animation. They can use different poses, the fluidity is a lot better, the colors pop a bit more, well, obviously because of the shading, really. And they are also allowed to do a lot more with certain scenarios. There's a couple of chase sequences and action sequences here that are a ton of fun, and the musical numbers are animated very well. They're filled with energy, and the choreography and dancing to them was surprisingly really solid. It looked something, well, not straight out of a Disney movie. It looked something like on par with something, and at least in my opinion, to traditional Disney film. I know that's weird to say for the Bob's Burgers movie, but I'm sorry, the animation was just really good. Maybe it's because Disney owns Fox, and this is the first 2D animated film in years that I've seen, and I was just so happy to see it, but it just looked really nice and really refreshing to see something like this back on the big screen as well. But sadly, even as a Bob's Burgers fan, I do have a couple of issues with this movie that hold it back from being fantastic. We're on par with something like the first SpongeBob SquarePants movie or South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut in terms of films based off of TV shows. Not that I should compare them, but I'm just using them as the basis. First off, as I said, the plot isn't really that special. You say it to someone, it probably won't entice them. The execution of it is what makes it really special, but honestly, this would have probably worked best as a standard like episode of the show, or even a season finale, if you will. It definitely felt undercooked, if you will. Sorry about the bad pun. For something that was released on the big screen in terms of story and scale. Honestly, I would have preferred if something like the World Wharf episodes or even the Bleakening Christmas special were the plot for this film, as those were, in my opinion, a lot more cinematic and had epic, more grander scales than this movie, honestly. And as typical with a lot of comedies, not every joke lands, and some of them go on for way too long, as I mentioned earlier. And speaking of dragging, boy, did this film in the second, almost to the third act, start to drag. This movie is an hour and 42 minutes long. It is longer than the Simpsons movie, South Park movie, and all three SpongeBob movies. I definitely think they could have at least trimmed 15 minutes off just to make it smooth, the movie go by a bit smoother and make the pacing feel a little bit more better as well. I would also like there to be a little bit more songs. This is a musical, but not the way you would think. There are really only 3 songs, and one of them and another song that plays during the credits. And I would have honestly liked a bit more in the movie, because the first two songs that play in the movie were legitimately good, not just from a animation standpoint. I was humming along and tapping my toes to the songs while the movie played. They were really catchy, and honestly, I would listen to them every now and then. And I would wish there were more of them. And the one that plays during the credits was also cute too. It's really the last song in the movie that didn't really work for me, but more on that later. And lastly, there is the villain. While this was an entertaining, fun murder mystery, you can easily tell who the villain is. And while they had their moments and were funny here and there, when they revealed their motivations and intentions, I felt that their comedy started to slow down, and I didn't really like their song, which is the last song of the movie before the one that plays during the credits. And I didn't feel like that song, while it did have its moments, and it definitely made me laugh here and there, and it's not a horrible song, it did feel like it was slowing the movie down a bit, honestly, and that character just started to wear thin on me after a while. But even with those issues, I had a blast with the Bob's Burgers movie. It was everything I hoped it would be and more. It's hilarious, the characters are lovable, and I loved how we got to explore more of them, and it leads to some very sweet, wholesome moments as well. The plot was executed very well and highly entertaining and intriguing, and the animation was very nice and a nice upgrade from what we get on the show. If you were a fan like me, definitely go watch this movie. I'm sure you're going to love this. The only people I wouldn't recommend watching this movie is if you hate the show. Don't even spare this movie a glance. It is everything you expect out of the show and more. Do not watch this movie if you hate the show. But if you are a casual viewer and you've liked what you've seen from the trailers and the things I've said have intrigued you, I'd say give it a shot. I think you will have a good time, not as much as I'd have, but you'll probably think this is a pretty charming, cute movie. And if you like what you see in the movie, give the show a watch. Like many Fox animated sitcoms, it was renewed for yet another season. Yay? But yeah, it definitely gets a recommendation from me. I had such a great time with this movie. So those are my thoughts on the Bob's Burgers movie. What did you all think of it if you've seen it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links at the end of the video. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.
The briefest of glances can start the biggest romances. Our eyes were doing the dances and they were making advances. When our eyes met, I was like, hey, now I bet that Joe could be the one.
Tina!
What?
What are you doing? You're just standing there. Are you gonna go to the bathroom or not?
Just 1 second.
Are you the one?
Okay, now I'm going.